Welcome to this machine tool video, Working with Independent Chucks. In this video, you'll explore independent chucks, including why and how they're used. Four-jaw independent chucks are designed differently than universal jaw chucks. Their four jaws can move independently of one another. This independent nature makes it possible to grip both round and square-shaped stock. Its design also allows for the turning of eccentrics. An important feature of the independent chuck is its ability to accurately center parts. However, it's important to point out that how accurately a part can be centered is dependent on the condition of the part's surface. A hot-rolled surface can't be chucked as closely as a cold-rolled surface. Begin the setup by thoroughly cleaning the mating surfaces of both the spindle and the chuck. It's important to always use a chuck board to protect the bedways whenever you're installing or removing chucks from the lathe. Remember, always tighten the cam locks in a clockwise direction. Place the round stock in the chuck. Starting with the two opposing jaws, use the concentric rings on the chuck face to roughly center the workpiece. Bring in the other two jaws and tighten all four approximately the same amount. Remember, at this point, you're just roughly centering the stock in the chuck. Next, mount the indicator so its spindle touches the workpiece. We use the indicator to exactly center the stock in the chuck. Rotate the chuck and measure the amount the indicator moves. Rotate the workpiece to find the lowest reading. This is where the workpiece is farthest away from the operator. Loosen the jaw closest to the low reading. Rotate the workpiece to find the highest reading. This indicates where the workpiece is closest to the operator. Tighten this jaw as you watch the indicator. Depending on where your lowest reading was, you may need to loosen the opposite jaw first. Rotate the chuck and measure the amount of indicator movement. It should be much less than when you started. Repeat this process by rotating the workpiece to find the lowest reading, loosening the adjacent jaw, finding the highest reading, and tightening that jaw. As you work, you should notice that there are fewer and fewer adjustments necessary. Rotate the chuck. By this point, the amount of indicator movement should be minimal. Repeat these steps until the part is indicated within 5/1000ths of an inch. Then, tighten the chuck jaw that's adjacent to the highest reading. Double-check that all four chuck jaws are tight. Now we'll center a rectangular part. Mount the four-jaw chuck in the spindle and lay out its center position, which makes setup easier. Lightly clamp the part in the chuck jaws. Put a center in the tailstock and slide it next to the workpiece. Using the layout lines as a reference, adjust the chuck jaws to move the center point layout to the tailstock center. Work with one set of jaws at a time. You'll need to loosen the jaw in the direction you'd like the part to move. When you have visually centered the layout position to the tailstock center, mount the dial indicator on the side of the saddle away from you. If the part isn't square, center one direction at a time. Move the saddle in until the dial indicator's point comes into contact with the low spot of one side of the part. Zero the bezel of the dial indicator. Gently pull the indicator spindle back by hand to avoid damaging it. Manually turn the chuck 180 degrees and smoothly release the indicator spindle. Note the high spot on the dial indicator. This will be the jaw that's closest to the operator. You'll need to back off the jaw on the opposite side half the amount of the dial indicator's movement. Turn the chuck manually to the low spot. Watch the indicator as you back the jaw off. Manually turn the chuck back to the high spot on the indicator. Tighten the jaw that corresponds to the high spot. Keep adjusting these two jaws until the total indicator reading is within the part tolerance. Repeat this process for the other two chuck jaws. When you've finished making your adjustments and the rectangular piece is centered, tighten all of the chuck jaws. With an understanding of four-jaw chucks, let's move on to six-jaw machines, also called adjustable scroll universal chucks. We'll start by exploring what it is and why it's used. A six-jaw adjustable scroll chuck has jaws that move simultaneously, like a typical universal chuck, but you can also manipulate the chuck mount. The problem with the typical 3 or 6-jaw chuck is that as it ages, and through use and misuse, the jaws become inaccurate. With an adjustable universal chuck, you can true up or adjust the chuck, called truing or bucking in. It's done by using 4 opposite socket head screws to push against pressure plugs that contact the back plate in order to shift the chuck on the back plate. An adjustable scroll chuck is like putting a 6-jaw chuck in a 4-jaw chuck. Start by mounting the adjustable 3 or 6-jaw chuck in the spindle. You'll also need a test bar or a precision piece of round stock for this project. If you're using a test bar, lightly clamp it into the chuck jaws. A piece of cold-rolled round stock makes a good test bar because it has sufficient roundness for most applications. Mount an indicator to indicate the test piece, then turn the chuck manually. Note the amount of eccentricity on the dial indicator. You can remove any eccentricity by adjusting the opposite pair of socket head screws. To begin, loosen the 4 adjustment set screws. Then, manually turn the chuck to the high spot and tighten the corresponding set screw. Repeat this process until the total indicator reading is within the part tolerance. Lightly torque all 4 of the set screws down. You've completed this machine tool video, working with independent chucks.